Good morning, good afternoon. My name is David Holdstock. I am CEO of a company called Geographic Technologies Group. I'm here today to conduct a webinar entitled How to Sell the Value of GIS to Your Local Government. I hope everybody is well and productive in these unusual times, but let's get started. Let me start with a fairly bold statement, just to get things going. In 2050, that's 30 years, the world's population will be 9.8 billion people. 6.7 billion people will live in cities. So the world of local government is not only becoming more urban, it's becoming more complex. More data to gather, more questions to answer, more options to consider, and more decisions to be made. Unprecedented urban migration is forcing cities to find new ways of becoming more sustainable and resilient places to live. One would presume, therefore, that we are all in the right place at the right time. Geospatial or geosmart cities and geospatial technology will be critical to our future. And let's be clear, towns, cities, and counties are the greatest incubator of GIS ideas. And I can hear a few of you GIS coordinators saying, speak on, dear friend, speak on. And I will speak on. I've made a career of working with towns, cities, and counties in North America and still am continuing to enjoy it. So let's move forward then. And I want to give you an overview here, basically. I want you to please, whether you're at home or in the office, please sit back with your coffee and enjoy what I would call a conversation about selling GIS. I understand you won't get this hour back, so I've tried to make it as original, new, and as interesting as possible. And as you can see, I'm starting with the power of 7. George Miller, Princeton University, I believe, 1956, in Psychological Review, said that the number of objects an average person can hold in working memory is about 7, also known as the magical number 7, plus or minus 2. I mention that because that's probably one of the most obvious sales pitches is keep it memorable. And I want you to critique this webinar today, because I break a load of rules and I use some of the rules to guide what we're trying to do. So hopefully it will be fun, and I hope it will be memorable. I like to be memorable because my mum has problems remembering my name. Anyway, moving forward, what are we trying to do today? This is the outline, basically. I'm going to introduce the concept of selling and the ideas and some of the things we need to be aware of. I think that's going to be important. Then we're going to go and talk about how GIS is immensely sound and rich with benefits. And then we'll get to the heart of this presentation, essentially how to sell the value of GIS to your local government. We'll talk about what is GIS today and tomorrow. We'll talk about why do local governments, why do towns, cities, and counties of all sizes and complexities invest in geographic information systems. We'll talk about topic 3, the forces that shape the way decision makers think, feel, and behave, which for me was the most exciting part of this. And then topic 4, the provocative language of selling and framing your argument. Topic 5, the language of sales. Then we'll move to a loophole in the sales strategy. I'll explain what I mean by that. Topic 7, which is a close cousin to sales, is we really do need to talk about, the cost-benefit analysis, the return on investment, the value proposition, and the business realization planning. That's going to be part of our future, so we need to talk about that. It's not particularly sales, but the information in that cost-benefit analysis is going to be important to selling GIS. And I keep using the word selling. I don't really mean selling, I mean educating. Then we'll talk about the future of GIS technology as it relates to sales. And we'll finish with conclusions and I'll mention the COVID-19 world and our changing world and how things may be influenced because of that. So we have an outline and we have 60 minutes. I have an awful lot of material to cover, so excuse me for going fairly quickly, but I want to discuss all of the topics and try and leave you with some food for thought. Remember, this is a discussion, albeit a one-way discussion. I do want to have a general discussion. Okay, you need to know who's presenting today. As I mentioned, my name is David Holdstock. I am a partner and CEO of Geographic Technologies Group. We've been around for 23 years. I've got 25 years of experience. I've developed over 300 strategic plans, worked with Esri for 25 years. I say Esri, our business partner is Geographic Technologies Group. Published extensive publications and presentations. I want you to know, in 2016, I published a book called Strategic GIS Planning and Management in Local Government. In chapter 9, there was how to sell GIS to local government. And that's where a lot of this comes from, but I've built on it since then. In 2020, I published a book called Smart Geospatial Practices and Applications in Local Government, an altogether different language. And I'm kind of under contract now to write the next book, which should be out in 2023, hopefully, fingers crossed, How to Build a Geosmart City, a step-by-step guide. Now, that's all very well and good. At least you have an idea, you know, someone with knowledge. And the only knowledge I have is of 23 years of roaming around North America, you know, including Canada, planning, designing, and implementing award-winning GIS solutions. And now the drawback here is the fact that, as a lot of you will sense by now, I'm British. I'm a Yorkshireman born and bred, and by nature, you know, the British are never truly happy unless they're miserable. That's my opinion. But I'm serious, but not serious. I'm joking, but not joking, and sometimes ironic, but not ironic. So take that with a pinch of salt. Understand the person who's presenting you today. I want to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to cover some material, but watch out for my serious, but not serious. I mentioned 300. I want to show the geography of it all. So it is different presenting to a California organization, to an Alaskan organization, to a Wyoming organization. There are different nuances. We just finished a job in the Middle East, which was a large, extensive GIS strategic planning job, which involved an awful lot of analysis and sales. So that said, we are a GIS company. We do plan, design, and implement total enterprise solutions, and we have supported our clients and successfully secured awards for them and with them. So I feel as if we have a background that allows me to speak about the sales process. Before we get to that table of contents I gave you, we need to talk about geographic information systems. And it's important we know what we're selling. So I'm going to say up front, I need you and everybody on the call today to understand something about themselves. You need to be an expert, or your career path has to be going down that road. You have to accept that you need to be the most knowledgeable person in the room before you go into the room about GIS. If you want to truly sell an idea, you need to understand that you have to be the most knowledgeable person. Let's talk about the history of GIS, okay? Just for a second, humor me here, and the evolution of GIS. Let's look at the history. What did Isaac Newton say in 1675? If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. How wonderful that is. Remember, we're going to talk about the language. Then we move to the pioneering stage, to the managers, or what I call the management stage, to the coordinators. And then we're moving quickly into geographic information officers. Now, I'm sure a few of you can sense by now I can give a presentation on that whole history of GIS, and it would be fun. All I want you to know is that you do need to understand there are certain prerequisites to standing up in front of elected officials and selling the idea of GIS and selling specific solutions. I need you to understand the timeline of GIS and what's gone on and how it's evolved. I think it's important to do that. Okay, now you look at 2020 to 2040. That's an important, we're just entering that now. So, you know, moving to a smart, resilient, sustainable organization is different. It's a different language. You may be able to think about GIS in these terms: strategic components of GIS, technical, logistical components, tactical components, and political components. Please understand that the sales process, you have to articulate yourself. You have to be believable. You have to be seen as the expert, but you have to use words that make sense. Okay? You don't have to use these 5 organizational components. We do sometimes to talk about, well, you know, there are strategic components we need to embrace if this is going to be successful. But remember the tactical and technical components. But the political components are a big issue, and that's the buy-in side of things. I'm not going to dwell on all of these things. We've got more to talk about. One of the things that's helped me an awful lot over the years is I developed something called the 6 pillars of GIS sustainability. So when asked about GIS, I'm able to say, well, GIS is this, but it's made up of these pillars. These pillars are fundamental to the success of GIS. And you're going to get asked those questions. So don't think you can sell anything. You're not going door to door selling kind of products. You're in an environment where you need to be the expert, and you need to say, well, GIS is composed of governance and management, digital data and databases, or the accuracy and reliability thereof, procedures, workflow, and integration, which is a euphemism for interoperability, which is a characteristic of a smart city or smart county. GIS software, Esri's total ecosystem is a delight. Infrastructure, it's not going to work without the IT infrastructure and that design. And then, of course, there's training, education, and knowledge transfer. That makes it more sustainable. Not going to dwell on this. But when you look at your organization, you need to know what you're selling. I mean, I'm essentially on this call, on this webinar today to say, hey, okay, I'm going to address all the components related to selling GIS. But what the heck are we selling? Well, you're not selling one product. You're all working in local government. So you need to know, and you need to benchmark where you are. You need to know where the weaknesses are. It's benchmarking is no more than a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You need to know that. Then you need to know what you have to sell. In this case, you can see governance and training are particularly weak. I mean, maybe they're application poor and data rich, but look at it. It looks like the data rich and application poor. My point here is understand your organization. You must understand your organization because your job is to improve the organization, so you need to know all the weaknesses. I mean, there's a lot of information there, and I could talk about each one of those for hours on end. We're not here for that, but my point is you have to look at where you are as an organization. What are the challenges? What are the barriers? What are the pitfalls? Okay? And as you can see from this graphic, there's an awful lot of challenges to GIS. And there's an awful lot of barriers and pitfalls. I mean, for example, if you look at challenges, if you're not aligning your GIS with the organization's vision, goals, and objectives, you're doing something wrong, and you're not going to be able to sell GIS. Because if there's no quantifiable return on GIS, it's harder to sell this solution. You know, you need endorsement from elected officials and decision makers, and that's the challenge you have. You look at the pitfalls, you know, maybe the solutions are too complicated. Maybe you're not publicizing your successes. Maybe you have poor infrastructure. And then you look at barriers. If there's no buy-in and no governance model and no roles and responsibilities, it's not going to work. So you kind of have to sell. You have to identify what your challenges are, barriers and pitfalls. And then you have to approach the decision makers on solutions to that. But you have to understand all these moving parts. And you even have to sell the organization on the fact GIS has a lot of moving parts, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of skill. Finally, why is it so complicated? Funding complexity, Maybe the governance isn't working. Data, open data is not, you're not using that. Software, people and personality, technology, complexity, complex workflows. Historic adoption could affect you. Priorities and alignment are not there. But you can see, I won't dwell on this, but I'm trying to set the scene for you understanding where you are in the maturation rate of GIS. Where are you? Are you adopting GIS? Is it, would you call it makeshift and informal? Because, you know, if you are structured, considered, and goal-orientated, what are you selling? You're selling the next step, the enterprise step, the organized, technical, tactical, and logistical. If you're an enterprise solution, you're trying to move to the next step. So you need, you know, we need somewhere to go. We need to know what we want to do. So you've got to have a vision and a goal for GIS, and then and only then can we decide how we're going to sell it. And we could start today and say, this organization hypothetically has just adopted GIS. So we need to move through these maturity phases fairly quickly. We want to go through makeshift, informal, to deliberate, to structured, to organized, to formalized. Let's just talk about sales before we get into the presentation. This is an introduction. It's not sales really, is it? I mean, it's education. The last thing I want to do is say I'm a salesman. I find that annoying if people say, well, he's a salesman. I'm not a salesman. Never have, never will be a salesman. I do enjoy and educating elected officials and city council and county officials and all on GIS. So the fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars, but in ourselves. And we should look at that. People do not buy what you do, they buy what you believe. That is, they buy the idea of thinking differently. So when I am stood in front of the city council, and my job is to present the recommendations in the GIS strategic plan that equals $950,000. I know they don't buying what I'm doing, they're buying what I believe to improve the operations of that organization. Okay. This is what I want you to do. I want you to write those 6 books down and go and buy them. This is where joking takes on a different form. I'm just joking here. There aren't 6 books. There are 10 books you need to buy. No, there are not 10 books. There are 195 books. These are self-help books. Let me make a point here. I just want you to know this. I'm being a little cynical, but I want you to appreciate it if you can. And that is, my frequent trips to the airport bookstores reveal a slew of books with titles like 10 Ways to Manage People, 4 Ways to Improve Self-Confidence, 9 Proven Techniques to Succeed, and so on. It's anecdotal, but even though this is, I'm a bit cynical about this, and you don't need to go out and buy any of these books, okay? It's not the point. The point is the fact that let's pat ourselves on the back, because the reason airports are full of self-help books is because we refuse to see ourselves in a bad light. We are filled with optimism. We have an unbelievable sense that life is definable, it's changeable, and it's improvable. And we are not indifferent to our fate. And that's why I've lived in the US nearly 30 years, because of that. And it's the power of that that makes it exceptional. But you're important. We haven't even got to this presentation, this webinar today. I'm still talking about you as a great communicator. You as someone who can inspire change and share a vision, goals, and objectives. You with passion as an educator, as understands the art of cooperation, analytical and problem solving, empathy, competence, ability to delegate, integrity, team building skills. That's you. Now remember, in the long history of humankind, those who've learned to collaborate, improve most effectively have prevailed. Darwin, Theodore Roosevelt, the most important single ingredient in the formula for success is knowing how to get along with people. Now we're starting to talk about real influence and persuasion and sales. And that was the introduction. That was all I wanted to do. I wanted to get that off my chest before we get into some of these fun things. But you see what I'm saying? The point is, you need to be an expert, and this is your career, and you need to be able to answer specific questions when they come up. You need to be able to stand up and sell GIS at the drop of a hat. You need to understand your organization. You need to understand the opportunities, and you need to understand all the barriers. Now we look at GIS is immensely sound and rich with benefits. Let's talk about this for a second. I drew this because I always struggle a little bit with Esri's total ecosystem. It really is fantastic. And just recently I was asked for an organization in California to explain to an elected official or a board member why they're continue investing in Esri software. Why don't they go open source or something? Well, it's not difficult, that one. I won't go into it, but you can see here, if we look at GIS and break it down in our own head, remember, you're not going to be reading anything when you're presenting. You're just not going to be reading anything. So you've got to somehow decompose all your issues and put it into understandable components. And with Esri's GIS software, this is how I do it. Desktop, mobile, and web. It's interesting where that industry is going. But then you can break it down: desktop solutions, mobile and field solutions, and web solutions, and the overlap. And then, of course, you've got the enterprise architect solutions. My point here is you must understand in simple terms so you can discuss it, okay, that opens up other doors to other information, the GIS ecosystem. GIS is immensely sound and rich with benefits. It is laden with extraordinary examples of how it supports our world. It has made and continues to make a dramatic and positive difference in the way local government operates in the 21st century. You can see I just grabbed that from that book I read. I don't need to share with you the whole ecosystem of software. I can just flash up, pretty pictures. I mean, look at it. From ArcGIS Pro to ArcGIS Hub to ArcGIS Urban to Insights to Dashboard to Story Maps to Web Apps. I mean, look at this. This is for sidewalk management. Look at it. It's fantastic. How good is that? I mean, this is real-time information. I mean, today wasn't to spend the time and talking about GIS and showing you some flashy images. But by God, it's good. Look at all this stuff. From story maps to web apps. I tell you what is fantastic, and that's Hub. I think our GIS Hub, as simple as it is, will organize the world of GIS beyond recognition, and it will allow everybody to understand what GIS is a lot more. You can see my government services. Superb. And more open data. I mean, these are some older graphics, but wow. I mean, we're in a fantastic place. I mean, I took 90 seconds explaining to you what GIS is immensely sound and rich with benefits, because I know you all know that. I think, Esri, you're doing a fantastic job in explaining it all. It can get complicated because of the entire ecosystem. You've got to break it apart and understand all the moving parts and where it fits into your organization. So, we've gone through introduction. We know you need to be an expert. We know it's immensely sound and rich with benefits. Now we need to talk about C, why we're here, how to sell the value of GIS to local government. Let's get into this a little bit. This is more of the fun part. So you're going to sit in front of elected officials and it's going to go something like this. I mean, I want you to have the fear of this, or if you've done it before and you failed, that's fine. I stood up in front of one organization and 20 years ago, and they said, well, why should we invest in GIS? I really didn't have the best answer. But this is what they're going to ask you when you stand up and say, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. They say, what is GIS? Why should our city invest in GIS? How does it work? What are the benefits? Who will use it? How much does it? Who will manage it? What is the value of GIS? What do other cities do? How accurate is GIS? What challenges do we face? What department should oversee GIS? Do we have a plan? Where does all the data come from? And how much training is needed? Okay, there you go. That's just a few of the questions you're going to get answered. And believe me, these elected officials are not going to, pull their punches. They're going to ask you very specific questions when you propose something. Henry Matisse once wrote, it has to be within you, as desire for drink is within a drunkard or love is within a lover. I know what he's talking about, painting, I think, because he's a French artist. Now, I put that in there just as a provocative thing, because there's some of you on the line who don't think they can sell all this stuff. Now, I want you to, if you are by nature an introvert, I want you to read the book by Susan Cain. Susan talks about the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. So I don't know what Henry Matisse is saying. Let's confine that to painting. Then again, I'll have a go at painting. But that's not true. You can be an introvert and you can be frightened of presenting, but you can teach yourself to do it because you're the expert in the room. Local government professionals love to think out the box. Being a good steward of taxpayers' money includes mastering the art of change, and along with the new business cultures. Success in selling comes when you have a genuine belief in GIS and you truly know why. It's not a job, it's a passion. Okay. Right, topic 1. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. There's a lot of material. What is GIS? Oh, they say before you go to grave, you have to at some stage have a go at defining what GIS is. A computer system designed to allow people to capture, store, assemble, analyze, manipulate, and display geographic. Oh, really? No, you can't just do that. You've got to start building on it. GIS is used by people to investigate, plan, manage, evaluate, calculate, predict, and assess our world. We're getting there. Part of it's true. Maybe GIS is used by virtually every person in the developed world to navigate, locate, engage, change, and model our multidimensional world. Hey, we're getting there. Maybe then you can start writing. You need to write what GIS is down so you can understand it. So GIS is a proven organization-wide and enduring technology that continues to change how local government operates. It defines people's relationships with geographic components and analytics. Wow. It defines people's relationships. It makes government stronger with immense potential to improve efficiency, innovate existing outdated practices, manage assets, increase productivity, offer real-time decision support, as well as navigate and predict future events. And is immensely sound and rich with benefits. It is laden with extraordinary and wonderful examples of how it supports our world. It has made and continues to make a dramatic and positive difference in the way local things operate. Now the point there is you have to document what GIS is, okay? Don't just copy somebody else's. The last thing you want to do, everybody in the line, is copy anybody else. Make notes from this, and you can phone me if you want to discuss anything. I'm not charging you for this. This is fun. But my point is you need to understand what GIS is now and tomorrow. Remember, my 6 pillars are on the left. So if anybody questions me, I know those. I don't need to memorize them. I've memorized them. I can say, well, GIS is this, this, and this. But we have to look out for the components that have to be in place to make a difference. And the components are those 6. Your job, explain why local government would be poorer for not investing in GIS. So after this webinar, go away without anything, without any books or anything, a piece of paper, and write down as many as many facts as you can about how the organization wouldn't function properly if they didn't have GIS. Then you're starting to understand what GIS is. Then you can memorize things. Now, going to the future, the next 30 years, we're talking about thinking differently. We're talking about you thinking about resiliency planning, augmented reality, indoor mapping, crowdsourcing, visualization, regionalization of GIS, more customer connections, smart city initiative, interoperability, all of those things. So you're going to see it change. So don't think it's static. You need to understand this, okay? Selling geospatial technology, you need to know what it is at this very moment. All right? Got that out of the way. What is GIS? Okay, we got that. So now you know, okay? Number 2, why do local government organizations invest in GIS? Well, there's a whole slew of reasons, and I could talk about them all day. There's a whole list there. Most of the time, one would think it's organizational staff. It's the people within the organization. Maybe it's a plan. Maybe it's a good sales pitch from a vendor. Maybe it's true and legitimate organizational and departmental needs for geospatial technology. Maybe it's an enterprise need, distinct operational needs. I mean, that's interesting because distinct operational needs is parcel management, a work order solution, or crime analysis. You know, things came before GIS, but then GIS were overlain on top of that. Culture and tradition of technology. I've been to some organizations in California that they're high tech and their persona is high tech. Maybe it was politics. Maybe cost benefit analysis helped promote the GIS, available funds, timing, etc. So if we look at that, you need to know why it happens. Maybe it is, as I say, influential staff. Maybe it's a consultant. Maybe it's a strategic plan. Maybe they're the top three. Maybe it's consensus and commitment to technology, organized culture, value proposition, available funds. What I'm saying is you need to understand why local government are investing in GIS, just in the back of your head, because that's going to come up when you talk about sales. Now, if we take a breather here and check on our time, we have the forces that shape the way decision makers think, feel, and behave. I've got to move fairly quickly. There's a lot of material here. Let's look at this. Remember this, the forces. So, here's an issue, is while everyone in the organization has different day-to-day concerns, we have to understand they all have one thing in common, measurable results. So elected officials may have have little concern for functionality, but they do want to know how GIS delivers a return on the taxpayer's investment. Remember that. City and county managers focus on governance now best to invest resources that benefit all stakeholders. IT directors and managers concentrate on the challenges of bringing the technology to the users. Now let me say something here for a second. In the top right-hand corner, the reason I wrote this chapter in this book, and I'm getting to the meat of this presentation in a couple of minutes, but that book at the top, Drunk Tank Pink, some of you may have read it. But I just want to say, in the late 1970s, scientists discovered that a particular color known as Baker-Miller pink calmed agitation. One researcher noted, even if a person tries to be angry or aggressive in the presence of pink, he can't or she can't. The heart muscles can't race fast enough. It's a tranquilizing color that saps your energy. Even the colorblind are tranquilized by pink room. The shade soon became known as Drunk Tank Pink, and in recognition of its tendencies to sedate difficult prisoners, so it was used in prison. But it wasn't only used in prisons. Enterprise football coaches painted visitor locker rooms with the color, hoping it would lull the competition. Interesting enough, and door-to-door salesmen wore pink shirts to pacify resistant homeowners. Now, what I'm getting to is the fact that, let me add this. Also, after being exposed to images of money, people are more self-sufficient, less helpful to others, and less sensitive to physical pain. Warm, sunny days induce optimism, but they also encourage impatience and aggression, causing both financial markets and crime rates to rise. Now, I just took that from Drunk Tank Pink because I wasn't so much interested in elected officials and city managers and all that, which I was, but was there anything else there we could look at? So what I came up with was, well, if we're going to sell to a room full of elected officials, I need to know what the obvious forces are that will influence them. I also need to know the hidden forces. And if we look at the obvious forces, as you can see from here, and it's 1 through, I'm just trying to move this if I can. There you go. The obvious forces, now remember, picture yourself in front of the elected officials. You're going to need to supply some empirical evidence. And you're going to need to, hang on. Oh, there you go, empirical evidence. You need empirical evidence. And as you all know, empirical evidence is information gathered by observation and experimentation, like maybe a response time or public safety. Then we're going to need, and then we need quantifiable results. Quantifiable results, this is a logic, explicit expression of the quantity of something. Close cousin to empirical evidence. Anecdotal stories. I have loads of anecdotal stories from automating processes to crime, to planning, to there's a story in Alaska that's particularly useful for a military base and damage the military base did. I won't go into that. We need to look at demonstrations. We look at consensus building. We have to look at case studies. We have to look at best business practices and standard operating procedures. References are particularly useful. References from other cities. References from organizations that have had enormous success. High-tech solutions work. Benchmarking of your organization works, meaning where are you now, where do you want to go, and where does GIS fit in? Even a blog and newsletter has proven to be successful, and then an award. So when you look at the obvious forces, I know I went through those very quickly. My take on this is when you're presenting, you need to look at those 12 obvious forces that influence decision makers. Okay? Now, on top of that, there's the hidden forces. For example, you need to be aware of the political agenda of elected officials, or as best you can. And then the personal preferences. And personal preferences, obviously you can't do a lot with personal preferences, but decision makers are human, and thus they're influenced by internal factors. Personal preferences can be changed if a solid sales argument is demonstrated. Exposure to images, language, which is absolutely key, alignment, which often we forget. The alignment's absolutely imperative to align the GIS. If you're going to build an action plan for GIS or ask for funding to support GIS, it has to align with the vision, goals, and objectives of the organization. The environment has to be good. The environment is the atmosphere and the ambience of the situation. You don't want that to spiral out of control. Oh, sorry. Before I went to environmental alignment, just a quick note about alignment is I have a 70-30 rule. So if the vision for the organization is those 5 things, 70% of the things they're recommending, GIS can help with. As simple as that. And then the environment. Sometimes I've had dinner with elected officials and things like that. So the environment's important to keep it professional, and you need to collaborate. The word of mouth of the maven, again, is very important. A maven is an expert who knows a good deal about GIS and spreads the word to colleagues. You have to make that work. It's really the culture of the organization. If you're standing up and presenting, don't fold your arms and look down to the left and things like that. I won't go into all of that, but the body language is important. Open and transparent government is a buzzword that really needs to be part of any sale, but often it's forgotten. The code of the selling trade is really more what I put in there. It's more about understanding the characteristics of good leaders and approaching other people with humility and respect. So you've got to approach this properly. Remember, you're not a salesperson. I don't recommend anybody become a salesperson. I want you to become an expert and an educator. And it's more fun when you're doing that. But elected officials have egos. And I've been to presentations where, certain elected officials, it was their swan song. They wanted to invest in GIS and wanted it done their way. And then, of course, there's the intangibles of GIS. Just the esprit de corps of the organization and things like that. That's the hidden forces. And I looked at the obvious forces and hidden forces, and I looked at a number of cities, and I tried to work out where they were coming from. I don't think I did a fantastic job, but you can see the obvious forces for a city in Alaska. They were really big on high-tech solutions, and then consensus was important, best business practices, and then they were aware of alignment and word of mouth, whereas the city in California, again, similar types of things, but I tried to number them, but they all play a role. So when you're presenting, have this in your back pocket and start thinking about, well, what's going to be important to them? I need to show evidence, quantifiable results. I can tell them a couple of stories that will help. but I need case studies and I need to show an award early and things like that. Just as a quick note, I wanted to some way to show you how values changed. And when I wrote that book, Strategic GIS Planning Management Local Government, I decided to play a game with my family, and it was values. And we played the game, and basically everybody had to pick their top 5 values out. And you can see my values at the top, my wife's, daughters, and sons. And then I did a 5-year study. And if you look at it, all I'm saying here is, let's say we look at my 20-year-old daughter, the third one down. 5 years ago, sense of humor, adventure, happiness, friends, and intelligence were 5 top values. Now it's empathy, independence, adventure, intelligence, and sense of humor. And she's at UNC, Chapel Hill. And she's doing a degree in public health, a master's degree in public health. And her values have changed significantly in 5 years. My point here is that local government values will change over time. And the values of elected officials will change. So we have to look closely at the vision for the organization, and you have to use that language. So if it is feel safe and secure, we need GIS to fold into that. Earn a good living, move around my community, enjoy a healthy environment, be empowered, included in society, live an active and healthy life. So we need GIS to fit into that. Okay. Now, the provocative language of selling and framing your argument. Oh, this is interesting, really. Let's just talk about this for a second. I've got to move quickly. I've got so much material. But if anybody knows anything about horse racing, the horse there, number 2 horse in front, is Secretariat. And Secretariat was first Triple Crown winner in 20 years or so. His record-breaking victory in the Belmont Stakes was won by 31 lengths. The veterinarian who performed the autopsy claims that he found that Secretariat's heart was twice the size of a normal horse's heart, which is often used when talking to people about you need heart and you need passion. You know, and I could quite easily say to you all, hey, listen, you need a big heart and you need passion to make this work. And that's what you should, that's what you should work on. Well, that's not the case, because NPR, Hidden Brain podcast, Shankar asked the question, is arguing with passion the most effective way to persuade people? Well, according to the University of Toronto, Canada, our unconscious moral framework shapes how we make arguments. So if you want to persuade people, you should frame your points using your opponent's moral framework. I'm hoping you're getting my point. You can go in there with the most enthusiasm and big heart and passion, but if you don't frame your argument in the words and ideas of the people making decisions, you might as well not have shown up. So therefore, the moral framework. Let's just for fun say a GIS coordinator's moral framework is buffer, intersect, overlay, calculate, statistics, analyze, predict, interpret. I'm just somewhat joking. But the elected official's moral framework is equity, economy, fiscal responsibility, safer society, stronger. This is what we don't do very well. We don't say that GIS is going to provide a cleaner city. It's going to provide a better, well-run city. It's going to promote good stewards of conservation. We don't do that. And we need to align our sales pitch to the vision, goals, and objectives of the organization. If you started a presentation saying GIS will save lives, save time, promote economic growth, engage your community, introduce new ways of thinking, you will be carried out on the shoulders of elected officials. GIS has panache, it has sophistication. Language is the only tool you have to articulate the benefits of GIS, and do so. That's an extension of what I've just said. Let's take it a bit further. You see on the left, GIS coordinators, lingo and mindset, then positive sales language, and then the moral framework on the right. So you go from, I buffered layers to do this, to do what? To make the community safer. Well, safe is fine, but it needs to be in terms of safer society, stronger organization, effective and well-run organization, equality and community equity, engage and notify citizens, reliable mobility, promote. You can see all the words here. These words are absolutely vital. And COVID-19 concerns about the job market, economic growth, and financial stability seem to be the priority for most leaders today. That's what they're talking about: job market, economic growth, financial stability. So moral framework, language of sales. Oh, look at that. I've broken the rule, the power of 7, broken the rule here. The beauty of our language. I do believe that we are defined by the beauty of our language, the rhythm of the words, and our ability to communicate with others. Apart from the African grey parrot. After this, Google African grey parrot and it'll tell you all about how that grey parrot communicates. But we're defined by the beauty of our language. Using your language with originality and freshness will set you apart from others. Though conversation is no more than the expulsion of air from the larynx, it can be beautiful and exquisite. The rhythm of words can be seductive and thrilling. How's that? Language is the only tool you have to articulate the benefits of GIS. So use it. Use words like this: faster, more efficient, reduction, minimize, accelerate, benefit, boost, original, extra, unique, valuable, reliable. The language of the coordinator is vital. The language of sales is vital. And the moral framework and the motivation that motivates elected officials. I was asked last week to sell an organization on a GIS strategic plan. So I did. I really shouldn't go in this today, but I did. I basically said, the reason you need a plan is 5 reasons. Remember the magic of 7, the power of 7, clear, concise, understandable, step-by-step roadmap, truly strategic, sustainable, scalable, and resilient. Evaluate, educate, and design, priorities and budget and blueprint. And then I went through stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. I broke some of the rules on the power of 7, but I was using adjectives that made sense, that would fit with the vision and goals of that organization. And then we went through and said, you will have, after you finish your plan, it will be a stronger organization, more resilient, it will improve efficiency, increase productivity, things like that. There is a loophole in the sales process. I mean, maybe you wrap sales in with a management strategy, like our 7 keys to GIS success: GIS master plan, GIS governance, quick success, education, ease of use, enterprise-wide implementation, and quantify the benefits and versus costs. So if you're telling elected officials, you're selling them on GIS and how you're going to manage the GIS. So you're folding it into one. The cost benefit, I haven't got long, but the greatest weakness as a GIS coordinator is failing to measure the value of GIS. I want you to know there really are 4 things we're doing now. This is a cousin to sales. There's a cost benefit analysis, ROI analysis, value proposition, and then now there's business realization planning. They're different. And I wouldn't worry about the differences. Your job is more value proposition, okay? That's what your job is, unless there is some funding set aside to do a cost benefit analysis, but you need to be talking about return on investment and value proposition, which is less of a scientific approach and more of a, this is what we can do. And that's why this is important. That's why these factors I'm about to bring up are vital, and the language is vital. You need to talk about GIS that will improve efficiency. It will increase productivity. It will save time. It will save money. It will make better quality and more effective decisions. It will improve data accuracy. It will automate workflows, save lives, improve information processing, comply with state and federal mandates, protect your community, improve communication, coordination, collaboration, provide data to regulators, developers, and other interested parties, respond more quickly to citizen requests, improve citizen access to government, and effective management of assets and resources. What I do have on the floor of my office here is a list of all the risks associated with that. So the risk of not doing this. So you need to understand that that's the return, and that's the language you're going to use to sell GIS, but you're going to back it up with some good information. Don't just copy this and say, oh, well, we're going to comply with state and federal mandate. No, what's the value and who is it involved? You've got to add information to that. Then you start writing about it. So you use all of those to start writing paragraphs about how GIS improves efficiency, improves information processing, document it. And you've got to present it in such a way, not this way. This is more of a strategic plan. Okay? But if I had 20 minutes, I would be able to say GIS has improved information retrieval. It's including real-time dynamic databases. It's innovative thinking and decision-making. It's accurate and reliable record-keeping with details. It's new real-time dashboard analytics. It's streamlining processes. It's improved navigation and location awareness. It's patterns and predictive analysis. It's proactive management. And then you put something together like this. If you're going to sell it, you've got to have start, high level and then move to the details. So I've got 10 minutes, I believe 8 minutes, the future of GIS technology. The future is the past. We react, we do not predict. Okay, everything in the past died yesterday, says the poet. Everything in the future was born today. There's no such thing as paradigm shifts, by the way. And if anybody wants a conversation about paradigm shifts, it's more natural evolution. Today, the future is now, and we're building on it, okay? All I'm saying to you in the sales side of things is, let's look at this for a second. The language is going to change. You're all going to become geographic information officers. You need to understand the 6 pillars of sustainability and the logical stages of maturation. You need to understand local government functions and operations. You need to understand geospatial management technology shifts. You just have to know it. If you know it, it's not the sales side of it, it's an education side and sales by default. Then you need to understand that it's a connected technology ecosystem. In the future, it's going to be a system of systems. We're also looking at culture, economic, environmental, and social, sustainability and resilience. That's the language of the future. How sustainable, how resilient is my city or my county? We have to have organic and continuous management improvement, performance. You are going to talk about high performance organizations, what it means and where does GIS fit and geospatial technology fit into that. And then there's the value proposition. We are always going to have business realization planning, measuring key performance indicators and business functions. What I'm saying is if you're going to sell GIS, you have to sell them on the fact that it's being managed properly and that all of these moving components we've got. Now we need support to make it happen because we're going to manage it properly. When I started, I said that in 2050, the world's population will be 9.8 billion. So we know what's happening there. Also, I want you to know that geosmart government will play a significant role in future cities. The social democratization of GIS governance and management styles will allow geospatial science to guide town, city, and county growth. The automated and universal collection, accuracy, standardization, reliability, and access, and effective use of digital data and databases will become more important than anything. Digital data will become more important than anything. Bear that in mind. The Smart GIS Hub will organize procedures, workflow, and interoperability, as well as an agnostic system of systems. The eventual collapse of that desktop, web, and mobile into GIS software functionality into a standard cross-platform ecosystem of geospatial widgets, wallpaper, smart and wearable gadgets will reinvent the way we interact. Our future training and education knowledge transfer in local government will be agile, real-time, transparent, and focused on capabilities and patterns of use. And then IT infrastructure will be a highly secure as-a-service cloud environment that will stimulate a more ubiquitous GIS environment. So there's a whole slew of smart technologies. So when we talk about selling GIS, don't go back to old books looking at it. You need to look at what it is now. You need to talk about cybersecurity. Do not go in front of the elected officials without having a knowledge of cybersecurity. That's what's going through their mind. Do not go to the elected officials and talk without knowing about real-time data and monitoring what the benefits are and where sensors and cameras fit in and applied predictive analysis and big data analytics and citizen and sensors and smart devices and wearable GIS. You've got to know all that stuff. You also have to know what success looks like. You've got to know what your parameters are for success. Maybe it's having a ratified vision goals and objectives. Maybe it's a strategic and sustainable plan. Maybe it's the right governance model. Maybe it's KPIs. Maybe it's high performance organization mindset, reliable digital data, training and education, mobile GIS, process, workflows, etc. We'll look at, you're going to be talking about all of these things in the future, okay? All of these things I don't necessarily have time to talk about today, but all of these are invaluable. But the conclusions, and it's sad that, oh, that a man might know the end of this day's business here to come. It's sad because we can't predict the future. We can't predict the future, but we can really, I suppose. Let's look at this. This is the one slide I wanted to get to, and we've got 4 minutes left. So you're up there in front of elected officials or decision makers in a room. Here's the thing. Number one, your role is to be an expert. You have to be believable. There's no incentive more powerful than an idea whose belief as time has come, and the idea of thinking differently. Remember the power of 7 as well, by the way. Understanding what exactly is GIS. You must understand what GIS is and do it in your own way, whether it's the 6 components of sustainability or 6 stages of local government maturation. Why do local governments invest in GIS technology? Understand why they do that. Then, and only then, understand the forces that shape how we think, feel, and behave. Shaping perception. Perception is the reality. What motivates people? So look at the obvious forces that will influence this group of people, whether it's empirical evidence, whether it's case studies, whether it's high-tech solutions, you choose, okay? Whether it's a blog or the fact you've just won an award and they love that, or it's the hidden forces, that is alignment or the language or even your body language or the intangibles. You've got to fold them in together and produce something that's exquisite, and especially the language. Number 5, understand the value and the values game. I've shown you over 5 years, I've got empirical evidence to show you over 5 years, a family changes its values significantly. They will change values. And with COVID-19 and with I'm telling you, California, I've worked in California, homeless and affordable housing is an absolute priority. Now maybe on top of that, we've got health and social distancing and how we're going to get the economy going again. What are they thinking? To know what they are thinking before they even think it themselves is what your job is about. You know they think good stewards of taxpayers' money. They understand change management. They understand new business cultures. But the provocative language of selling and understanding the moral framework, talking about outcomes versus technology and the language. Communication and articulation, the human condition. The power of 7, originality and freshness. And of course, lastly, but that sales loophole, is merge your vision and goals into your management plans. One last thing. I didn't really want to finish with this, but if we do see a downturn in the economy next year, remember local government, okay, is going to struggle with sales tax. And next year we can anticipate, or we should embrace the fact that they're not going to be spending an awful lot of money. There's going to be a lot of cost savings. So if you are the GIS coordinator of choice, start thinking about how you're going to address that specifically. You have to determine the return on investment and where GIS fits in. But most importantly, how you can potentially combine activities, adapt procedures, maybe restructure the GIS, maybe outsource if you have to, redesign things, change service levels, and even cross-departmental programs. I came up with that because I know I'm going to have to talk to elected officials about why should they continue investing in GIS with the downturn in the economy and everything where it's going. So it's important to recognize that. So what we've done today, and we're right on time, is we've gone through the introduction, we talked about GIS and then how we sell the value of GIS to local government. We talked briefly about the future of GIS technology and then some conclusions. But I want to thank you all for attending. I know I covered an awful lot of territory. Please feel free for anybody today to reach out to me via email or a telephone call. I'll be delighted to talk to you and help you out. I'm not no charge, I'm just helping you out essentially as to, to help with regards the sales pitch and the approach to selling GIS. but I want to thank everybody for participating today. So thank you.